Hi, welcome. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you being here. Today's video is about inflation. The March 2022 CPI data was revealed today, and we're going to talk about its impact on finances as well as some mitigating strategies for capital preservation. In this video, I'm going to discuss the consumer price index and inflation. We're going to talk about the latest numbers. I'm going to provide some tools to fight inflation as well as some specific strategies that I've been employing. Hint, hint, I actually made a video about this in the past, but this is really just to reinforce the previous information that I provided, because as the trends are going, we're really going to see the importance of protecting our cash from inflation. And finally, I'm going to wrap up by providing you with some resources that might help you in your decision-making process. But first, here's a little bit about me. Hi, welcome to my channel. Thank you for watching. Here's a little bit about me. My household consists of myself, my husband, and my toddler. My mom also lives with us, but she's not included in our finances. We live in a high cost of living city in the Northeast. My husband and I both went to graduate school, but fortunately, we no longer have student loan debt. I work in banking and he works in aviation. I take care of the family's finances, and I love my role as the self-appointed CFO. I love to talk about all things money, whether it's investing, saving, or making money. I look forward to sharing a wealth building journey with you. I look forward to getting to know you, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Early this morning, the Bureau of Labor Statistics released CPI data for March of 2022. CPI stands for the Consumer Price Index, and it calculates the weighted average price of select goods and services that are part of everyday life. There are over 80,000 items that are included, and really they represent items that all of us, or nearly all of us, use. Approximately 95% of the population uses these items. The information is calculated every month, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics tracks all the changes over time. They add that up, and that gives them an estimate of annual inflation. What is inflation? It's in the news, it's everywhere, you know what it is. It's an overall increase in prices for all, or at least almost all of the goods and services that we use. Essentially, inflation erodes our purchasing power. A dollar is just not what it used to be. Money buys less. If you have $1 today, but something costs $1.05 tomorrow, your dollar is just not worth as much because you can't buy as much stuff with it. As of today, April 12, 2022, the CPI was up 1.2% in March. Since they do a 12-month rolling basis, that means as of March of 2021, combined, it is up 8.5%. That is what we are looking at right now for inflation. This is the highest that it's been in over a decade. If we break down that 12-month total, we find out that food and energy have the highest jumps. Food went up 8.8% and energy went up 32%. What does this mean for personal finances? If we know that it's eroding purchasing power, the best thing that we can do is fight it. Here's how we would fight inflation. If you are enjoying this video so far, don't forget to hit the like button so the algorithm knows that it's good, and of course subscribe for more content. If you think any of the information that I provide here might be helpful to somebody else, be sure to share it with them. The easiest way would be to get a raise that is adequate, that is keeping up with inflation. But unfortunately, that is out of our control. We don't determine what other people pay us unless we run our own businesses and we set our prices. The next best thing is investing. Investing over a long period of time gives us returns that far exceed inflation. In fact, inflation-adjusted returns average approximately 7% over the last couple of decades. But there are some issues with investing. For starters, in the short term, it is very risky. I don't think I need to tell you that. All you have to do is look at stock market performance year to date. We are getting whooped. Not to mention, there are some tax implications if you're selling appreciated securities within a 1-year period. You simply don't get the capital gains tax rate if you haven't held a security for a year. At least not if you're keeping it in a taxable account. Presumably, you're not really touching your retirement account anyway. And finally, you have less time to grow. One of the powers behind compounding that makes it so fantastic is time. Time is a fantastic fuel for compound returns because every year your money makes money on top of your money. But if you take it out too early, you don't give it that time to grow. So what's the next best thing? Cash. Cash is no match for inflation, but you need cash. You need liquidity in order to meet your obligations day to day. If my boss doesn't give me a raise, I still have to pay the electric bill. But the electric bill doesn't take stock. They want cash. And on top of my daily obligations, we need to have cash for emergencies. The market is closed on the weekend. The market closes on a holiday. If the market is down the way it is now, we don't want to be selling low to cover emergencies. So we need cash. But we also hear that cash is trash. Why? Because it's weak against inflation. It has no power. So what should you do with the money that you have in cash that you might need either for an emergency fund or a sinking fund? I already made a video about this. If you've watched it, you should know it by now. iBonds. iBonds is the answer. Let's do a recap. iBonds are bonds that are issued by the United States Treasury. It has a two-part interest rate. The first part is a base rate, which is fixed for the life of the bond. And the second part is an adjustable rate. That adjustable rate adjusts with inflation. It adjusts twice a year. They announced the rate in April, effective in May, and in October, effective in November. Currently, at the time that I'm recording this video, the base rate is 0%, but the adjustable rate is 7.12%. Anyone who purchases an iBond between November of 2021 and April of 2022 is going to get the 7.12% adjustable rate. We also know that the iBond pays that rate for the entire month, no matter which day your purchase goes through. If you purchase an iBond on April 25th of 2022, you will accrue interest the same way as the person who purchased it on April 1st of 2022. The iBond also allows you to lock in all known interest rates even after they reset. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. If you have any doubt that the iBond is a good deal, let me remind you that the government caps you at $10,000 a year per social security number. It sounds too good to be true. What's the catch? I'm not sure if I should do it. You should do it. It is such a good deal. They don't want too many people doing it, or at least they don't want people doing too much of it. But there are some workarounds. One of the workarounds include getting an additional $5,000 a year per social security number, but you can only do that if you have a tax refund. You can also give it as a gift, including to children. This is another opportunity for you to get more iBonds on the books at your house if you have kids. Hypothetically speaking, if there's a husband and wife couple, they each have 2 children, they could presumably get $40,000 a year. You have to get it through the Treasury. You can't hold it in an IRA. You can't hold it in a brokerage account. You can't buy it at Vanguard. You can't buy it at Fidelity. You have to go directly to the Treasury and purchase it there. You have to pay federal taxes, but you don't have to pay state taxes if you do live in a state that has a state income tax. There's an exception to the federal tax requirement. If you use the money for education, you do not have to pay a federal tax on it. The money is locked up completely for the first year. Some rare exceptions. For example, if there is a disaster that was declared by the president in the area that you live in, they might be able to make an exception. But for 99% of us, the money is locked up for the first year. And if you cash it out after the first year, but before 5 years, you pay a 3-month penalty for cashing it out. But if you cash it out anytime after 5 years, you get the full amount. You don't have to cash out the whole thing. Partial redemptions are allowed before maturity. If you are cashing some of it in before it matures, you can cash it in $25 increments. You don't have to take all of it out. What are some strategies? Like I said in my previous video from a couple of months ago, right now my focus is getting cash out of my accounts and keeping my accounts at the bare minimum. I don't want to be losing my money to inflation. What I have been doing since last year has been moving my emergency fund into iBonds. There are some other strategies that I discuss in more detail in that other video. I will link it in the description box below. But for now, here are some very high-level strategies for you to keep in mind if you decide to do this. If you're going to buy this, buy it as soon as possible. It allows you to lock in the rate. When you invest in iBonds, you get the initial rate for 6 months. That is regardless of how much time is left on that rate. Then that rate resets. It resets at the following rate. Even if it is no longer being offered, the Treasury honors all announced rates. I'm going to give you some examples with my own purchases because I purchased them at different times. Since my goal was to get my emergency fund into iBonds, I had no choice but to max out my allotment annually. I started out in October of 2021. The first rate that I got was 3.54%. The Treasury announced all purchases starting in November would change to 7.12%. That doesn't mean that my October rate changed. mean? My October rate is gonna go through until the end of this month, April 2022. Then, starting in May, I am going to start getting 7.12%. And then that's gonna go all the way through October, at which time I'm gonna be getting whatever rate is gonna be announced in May. And given the CPI data that just came out, my best estimate is that it's going to be somewhere in the range of approximately 8%. Even though I knew the November rate would be better, I didn't wait until November to buy. That was intentional. My goal was to buy as soon as possible. That means not only do I get to lock in the rate, but it also means that my money gets freed up quicker. If I had waited until November 1st to get the 7.12 rate, I would be tied up until November. Now, I made a purchase at the end of October. I'm not only going to be free to take my money out at the beginning of October, it also means that I know the next 3 rates that are coming up. Because they honor all of the rates that they announce, I know my rate over the course of 18 months. Here's a different example of what happens when you wait to buy your bonds. We bought some additional bonds in January of 2022. Because my goal was to move all of my cash, which serve as my emergency fund, into iBonds, we had more money in cash that we would have been able to put in all at once. By investing in October, we each maxed out our 2021 allotment. We had to wait for January of 2022 for the clock to reset. In January, that 3.54% rate was no longer available. The rate changed in November and it was gonna last through April. In January of 2022, we invested at 7.12%. That rate is going to change sometime in July for us. We did it at the end of January. It counts the entire month of January as our investment month, and 6 months later pushes us out to July. In July, we're going to reset at the next available rate, which will be the rate that is going to be announced over the next couple of days, effective in May. Like I said just a few minutes ago, I'm estimating that to be approximately 8%. I'm gonna cruise again for the next 6 months, but in January of 2023, I have no idea what the rate will be, because that rate that I'll be getting in January of 2023 is the same rate that will be announced in October of 2022, effective November of 2022. I did try my best to explain this in plain English. I hope I didn't lose you, but if I did, please feel free to leave me your questions in the comment section below. Another strategy that you can use is to use a ladder. A ladder is when you periodically put money in at regular intervals rather than putting the money in all at once. Our first investments went in October and our next investments went in January. That's because we had maxed out in October. We had no opportunity to put money in anyway. It was a 2-bird, 1 stone kind of situation, but some people may not necessarily max out the entire amount anyway on the first try because there is a lockup period. Do not go all in unless you have other cash that is available. So if you're using this as your emergency fund, you don't want to put yourself in a position where you have money that is locked away and you have no ability to access it. In our case, when we were making the decision in January of 2022 on whether or not we wanted to put more money in, one of the things that we had to check on was making sure that we had enough money to get us through October 1st of 2022. The first iBonds that we invested in October of 2021, that is when that money gets freed up. We needed to make sure that we had enough to get us through October. We decided to keep that money in a high yield savings account, and we said anything above that we're going to use to max out the January 2022 iBond, and we did. I mentioned that you get credit for the whole month, even if you go in later in the month. So do that. Buy later in the month. Don't buy on the last day because it needs time to process. If you wait too long, if you buy maybe say on the 27th or the 28th or the 29th, you might find yourself in a position where the money doesn't clear for several days and the bond isn't issued on time. It's not the end of the world, but if part of your strategy is to get your money in at the end of the month rather than the beginning of the month, that kind of ruins that. Also, if your strategy is to lock in a rate and you're doing it at the end of April, you might find yourself in a situation where you automatically get bumped to the month of May. Do it later in the month, but don't wait until the very last minute. Give yourself some time. Don't let yourself get deterred by the $10,000 limit. Buy what you can afford. Periodic purchases are allowed. As long as you're putting in at least $25, you can do it over time. $10,000 is the maximum, not the minimum. Even if you don't have a ton of money, you can still do it. This next one is a personal decision. Some people have different philosophies about tax returns. They feel like they don't want to give the government an interest-free loan, which is fine. But you do have the option of overpaying your taxes in order to increase your iBond purchases with your tax return. That one does come in a paper form, but paper can be converted to electronic. If you're chasing that extra $5,000 a person, here's your chance. We are still early enough in the year that you could potentially make some adjustments to your W-2 W-2, and that way when you file taxes for next year, you'll be in a position to buy an extra $5,000. You can also use a trust or a business to buy it. You simply have to use a different EIN number. Here are some sources and some additional information. The latest CPI data can be found on the BLS website that I'm linking below. I'm also going to put a link to the Treasury Direct homepage, and of course you can check out the latest bond rates. I want to hear from you. What are you doing to fight inflation? Have you heard of iBonds? If you have not, that tells me that you did not watch my video. I don't like that. Go check it out. Do you have any iBonds? Are you interested? Does that sound attractive to you? What other tools to fight inflation that you want to share that I didn't mention here? Are you an iBond expert who has some additional strategies that I failed to mention? Leave a note in the comment section below. I look forward to hearing from you, and I will see you next time.